Hello, team players, and welcome back. You guys get just me today. No Bob here. He's got a lot of life stuff going on, but we got an amazing show planned for you here, breaking down some of the differences about what happened last night. Eagles just don't score. Detroit doesn't do anything either. Crazy week in the world of fantasy football. Obviously, a lot of studs going off. Bijan, welcome back to the party. So let's have an amazing day today, answering all your questions and getting ready to go win this championship. So, guys, welcome as always here. This is going to be a fun day today here on Local Football Flavor. Again, a little bit different than how we normally do it here without Bob being in the house, but we're still going to make this an amazing show regardless, whether you're watching us on the standard or on the vertical version. We are here for you. Let's start off with some of the questions here out of the bat. By the way, love you guys all sending them in already and before show starts here. So Ahmad's pointing out here that thanks to Monty and Goddard, we got to be stressing this. Yeah, that's kind of what I was starting with, is that Philadelphia and Detroit last night just felt like playing defense. And it does bring a further thought and fear with the lines that has to be presented. And that is the aggression of Dan Campbell is a beautiful thing when it works. But if Campbell starts stressing and it starts looking like, hey, maybe this isn't going to go our way and we're going for every fourth down, it can really put them back behind the curve. And that is one of the major things that is of concern for me watching the Lions moving forward. It's one of the reasons I give the edge to the Rams over Detroit in the NFC. And it's really a toss-up for me between the Rams and the Eagles when it's all said and done. So these first couple questions, we had some technical things. So if you guys sent your questions in before kickoff, I can't put them on the screen yet. I'm just kind of going through them as I'm able to read them out. Josh, you sent one here with a quick hitter of your PPR of your running backs. Saquon, Henderson, Marks, Montague, Bill, Corum, and you need to start 2 and flex 1. Should you be picking up Gainwell, Rodriguez, Tootin, Singletary, or Watson? Well, let me start with Watson first, because Watson's an interesting case. First off, Bob and I nailed it. Watson didn't get a whole lot of targets. He got 4 catches, but he still can put 4 catches into 2 touchdowns. That is insane that he has that capability. But, I mean, you're talking like Gale Sayers on just the receiver version of it. I just don't see how it's sustainable. And that's my problem. And I admit it, it's the style of receiver. It's why I'm not as big on JMO as I should be. But of that grouping that you mentioned here, Emmanuel, Gainwell, Rodriguez, Tootin, Singletary, Christian Watson is a realm of his own. His ceiling could blow out any of the other ones. So in that regards, I can't certainly fault you for wanting to go out and do that. And then the question goes, essentially, would you rather have Bill or Corum than Watson? And at this point, given the strength of the rest of your running backs, predominantly Henderson and Saquon, I think I'm okay with letting Bill walk, and I would keep Corum on the upside that can go forward. All right, guys, I'm just going to put this out here flat out today. I've been trying to tell this for Bob the whole time. Every time we talk kickers, we lose 10% of our audience. And I love, Nick, that you want to talk about kickers with Bob, but Bob ain't here, and I'm not talking Panero. So that's just a fact of life. But to your next question here, you got Genty, Bowers, and Pickens tonight to seal the W. Gotta love that, man. Gotta love that when you got a good, solid start here. Personally, I think that it's going to be interesting watching what the Raiders can do. Are they going to fast feed Bowers like there's no tomorrow? Is this a 2-man offense? If it is, it could work pretty well. It's kind of what we're seeing in Indy. So there's tools there in Raider world. but it's also November for the Raiders. And I don't know, my entire life, that's when the Raiders start to check out, and they're already in the vacation destination of the world. So check out even faster. That's kind of my thought about the Raiders there overall. So your next question, Nick, is: are you worried about Warren losing snaps to Gainwell in yesterday's game? Wonder if it's actually due to the injury that he took. Yeah, I mean, it's 100% due to the injury. Tomlin has even said so after the fact that Gainwell outcarried Warren because of the injury. To me, the larger fear is, why is Gainwell getting as many snaps in the first place? But when you look at it and say, from the Pittsburgh perspective, they want to keep Warren fresh because they're afraid he's going to break. He's one of the smallest backs they've ever really had under the Tomlin administration. So that is why they're going Gainwell to the degree that they are. But it was mostly the injury that put him out there. And we'll see how much moving forward they put the rookie in. And another positive thing for the Steelers offense, for those that are willing to risk the insanity that it is that after Rodgers got hurt, they never punted again, and they never had a turnover. And that's not something that Rodgers had going for him. They scored the same amount of points in 2 drives in the second half as they did with Rodgers for the entire first half. So something to point out. Now we're up to the point where we have actual questions working on our system. We can put it up here. So is the Browns defense a solid play next week against the Raiders? Looking here on my short board, we have their defense as one of the top 4. So yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you want to keep track of tonight, but the one thing that the Browns can do very well is make you one-dimensional defensively. Now, Shador could blow this whole thing out and make you hate the fact you're starting any Brown. However, the Raiders' offense does not scare me nearly as much as Baltimore's, and they were a decent play against Baltimore. So, yeah, Nick, I would definitely say that looking there is a solid start to look at. Steve, does Bucky play? Oh, God, do I hope so. He was out practicing last week. I've invested in him like crazy, particularly for the playoff run. And there's a lot of my best balls that would love to have him step into the fold. All right, Ahmad. So you're up 22 in a PPR with Aubrey left, and your opponent has CD. Do you pull this out? Ooh, that's going to be tight. My gut says yes, but CD can only have 1 touchdown. So that's where I would lean with that one, and that's where I would go. Was this the worst week in fantasy history? No, there's plenty of week 1s and Septembers in general that have been much worse than this, but it wasn't pretty either. And one of the main reasons why is there were so many turnovers across the league. So many special teams and pick sixes that you don't normally get. Like the Steelers are a perfect example of that. The Steelers have 2 turnovers that they take to the house, and they give Cincinnati an extra 2 possessions in that second half. That's why the Steelers offense doesn't put up any points, fantasy speaking. And there's a lot of teams across the league that had defensive touchdowns that really led it going into that direction. So, guys, just to put us out here, let you guys know up front, we are having a little bit of a problem displaying across the 2 feeds. We love you watch on both the horizontal and the vertical, whatever's doing it for you. But the reality is that some of the questions are coming through. I can put them on screen, and some of them are not. So just a full disclaimer on all of that information for everyone. So what do we think about selling high on Travion Henderson? And if so, who you should target? This is the Vrabel conundrum. And this is the problem that we have with it, right? Travion Henderson is ripping the ball off the cover now that he's actually getting the opportunities. And he's kind of making it to the point where it's like, how can you not give this guy the ball? New England has a slightly better than average playoff run. So, Amont, unless you're in a spot where you desperately need to win today, and you're on the cusp of making or not making the playoffs, I wouldn't sell Travion. I would sit back and let Henderson basically over the next 2 weeks establish himself within Vrabel's world, which I think he already has, and then just ride him throughout your playoffs. That's how I would go with dealing with Travion Henderson. And I think that that's probably going to give you the best long-term results when we're looking at it from that perspective. Welcome there. Jason, keep sending your questions out, guys. We're in a spot here where send all the questions this way. We are here to answer them. That's what we do here at Local Football Flavor, is answer all the questions. And one of the things that we always like to have the pulse on is, as well as all the best ball games we do, what the future is going to have and who is worth going to be investing in overhyped for the following year. One of the players, when we're already kind of putting a pin in to think about for next year, that's going to be underrated is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr. with the giant asterisks that Kyler Murray never plays another snap in the NFL. Because we see that with a competent quarterback, that position gets targeted like crazy. Harrison is a vastly better receiver than Wilson, and he would have done much more with it. So if we put a quality, competent quarterback in there, people will be stealing Marvin Harrison Jr. next year in the 3rd or 4th round, and he's probably got a 2nd-round value on him. Just throwing that out there for the takeaway there. All right, Amont, like I said, I had this week put away, and then McBride proceeded to score 30 against me, and Monty and Goddard combined for 8. Yeah, man, it's the problem with what I was just saying about essentially the Cardinals, is that Kyler Murray is not capable of carrying them or delivering them really anywhere. And you put someone in, even a probably 40th at best quarterback in the NFL, who can just feed garbage time, and McBride gets a touchdown, and pretty much they only threw to 2 people. They threw to Harrison's position and they threw to McBride. And you see all of these fantasy points that come up as a result of it. And last night's game, there was a concern I have for Monty more so than the greater Detroit Lions offense. I mentioned earlier that my concern for the Lions is throwing away too many possessions by going for it on 4th down and the sword that is that. But the bigger concern that I have is that Campbell got a little bit shiny object isms there, and Monty was not getting on the field very much at all. And someone who has a lot of stock in Monty, all of my paid leagues, he's on the roster. He's on a ton of my best ball exposure. I am now officially starting to worry about Monty. And that is a thing to consider moving forward. And since we're going to get questions all around, where do we look at to replace Monty if we go that direction? He's pretty much going to be a package deal to get into an upgraded player. And that's how I'm kind of thinking it here moving forward when we look at what are we going to do with the Monty conundrum moving forward. What do I think about Flowers or Jennings this week? So overall, Baltimore is, in my opinion, about to roll and take off. We saw that Henry started to lock in against a really good run defense that the Cleveland Browns have. Yeah, Lamar threw a couple picks, but the one kicked right off the guy's hands. So I'm not all that concerned about it. In fact, actually, because I think they're going to lean on Flowers more. When we look at total projected points for next week, Baltimore's in the top echelon of the league. The Niners are mid. And when we look at that, total points going around, Genti really is the 3rd option on his team. Flowers is pretty much the 2nd. I would have him ranked above Andrews. So I would lean more for Flowers over Jennings for next week. And that's regardless of whether it's a PPR setting or not. And then would we pick up Sean Tucker and Gainwell? Gainwell's they're both actually completely injury dependent. If Warren is out. Gainwell is a smash start. If Bucky does not play, I'm starting Tucker as well. So this moment in time, since you will in most leagues, you can't, your waiver wires won't open until tomorrow after the press conferences are done. I want to hear Bucky's and Warren's injury report before I make up my mind. If either of them are out, and Christian, they're both out, I'm leaning more Gainwell. However, if they are, especially because the quarterback's going to be out, if they are 1-1, you take whichever one the starter's hurt. And if they're both healthy, you don't take either one. So that would be my breakdown for you there, right there, talking about who it is to look at or who it is to feel out for your Gainwell or Tucker equation right there. And then chucking the other end of our other feed here on our glorious volume vertical play, guys. Appreciate everyone watching us on really whichever one you want to watch on. We're going to be feeding off questions of both sides. Welcome, learn more, shoot all your stuff up there. And shoot your questions in, as that's what we're answering here all the way across local football flavor. And like last week, I have no idea what's going on this camera. Sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Nonetheless, firing your questions. We're here to answer them. Quick hitters and deep dives, of course. But as you guys are typing those up, I want to bring up one of the things that is always important to look at when you're talking about the rest of the league overall, and in particularly about the preseason expectations and what are going on now. And one of those things to look at is how much certain teams, particularly defenses, have changed. And one of the things I want to point out here, in terms of all of the 64 units, each team's offense and defense, no team was more radically disappointing than the Chicago Bears defense. And I point this out for two main reasons. ESPN loves hyping up teams, and the Bears were definitely one of the ones this year. And when you look at getting your stuff ready for moving forward for future bets, keeping perspective of where the blind spots of the current market are incredibly valuable. Dustin Wells, welcome, man. So you're up 69. Nice. And they still have Genty, Williams. What are your chances between Genty, Bowers, and Williams? Well, I think that there's a good chance you're facing against 3 touchdowns right there as a floor. And when you start with that, we're already at 18 just in the touchdowns. I do think that 69 is probably high enough to get you across, assuming Bowers doesn't get something stupid like 15 targets. So I think there's a fairly good chance that you're going to pull this one out. ESPN probably says you have a 90+%. I would put it probably somewhere around 70. But either way, I would definitely be confident that you're going to be pulling that one out in terms of getting the win there today. And looking back here, as you guys, like I said, are typing in your questions at other elements of the market that have been ridiculously wrong. Obviously, they undershoot the Colts still in not giving them enough value in terms of what they were putting up and what they were expected. But it's really the defenses that Vegas has gotten incredibly wrong. And by this, I mean the sports books. Teams such as Seattle, the Packers, and Cleveland, their defenses are releasing so many less points than are projected in terms of the actual points on the NFL schedule. They then pour into fantasy football. And looking at those calculations that are happening, it's something really big to consider that normally they're pretty much spot on. But there are a couple of examples that really need to be exploited out there. And to me, the Bears defense is certainly one of those ones to target out, or which goes back to the previous question that we had, which was, do you pick up Gainwell? If Warren is hurt and not playing, Gainwell is an absolute smash start to me. And I'd even consider picking up the rookie Caleb Johnson. So how do I feel about Philly's defense as a set it and forget it for the rest of the equation here, Dustin? So looking at Philly overall here, they're going to be in what probably is a less than ideal situation this upcoming week. But the way that they looked is probably going to overshadow any matchup that they're in. Great matchup in week 13. 14 is above average. 15's pretty solid. 16 is above average as well. And 17 is a little bit rough. So first off, if you're not playing in week 17, if your championship doesn't go that far, you don't need to worry about it. But I am totally fine in terms of Philadelphia as a set and forget it. Majority of the weeks, this week pretty much being the exception, you're going to be running as one of those first teams to pick up and put on your roster anyway. So, yeah, I have absolutely no problem with that, Dustin, of having them being a set it and forget it lineup for you. I think it's one of those ones that it's a really good spot to throw them in and get them out there for you. So, yeah, guys, keep shooting your questions in as we have there. If there's any type of deep thoughts or dives that you want us to go into, that's obviously what we do here on Local Football Flavor. On the Monday here, getting obviously a little bit less traction. It's that time of the year. If you're out of it, you're out of it, as they say. And the good part is that compared to many channels, we don't get drop-offs like that. And the reason is those that follow us tend to stay in it. The trade advice that we give and really the draft advice leading into the offseason is really dominant. And we have collectively between Bob and I well above what percentages dictate should be getting into best ball playoffs. And that's for everyone who out there watch me know that I took basically Bucky and Collins on every combination I could ever make. And I'm still getting in there despite the injuries to both of them there for the dominant part of the season. There's a lot of going out and research that goes in there. And part of the backings of what our system is based upon is being able to decipher between which information sources are just giving out clickbait and which ones are actually giving out meaningful information that should be listened to and followed, and then how to act upon it accordingly. And that skill set and that formula that we have really is derived from a lot of major sources, but not the least of which is the actual spreads and betting information that comes from Vegas. Because at the end of the day, you can have a website, blow out a bunch of hot air, and have actually be profitable and never be right. Those casinos have to be right, or they will lose millions upon millions of dollars on a single game. And that's the reality of how this is. And it's a very complicated equation of turning betting information into fantasy football that goes way deeper than looking at player the probable pick'ems over unders for yardage whenever you actually look into this. So guys, like I said, Bob and I are here. We're here to answer all your questions. Obviously you don't get Bob today, but that's what we do here at Local Football Flavor. And if you have any specific things, shoot them out here, because I don't normally get this kind of a lull here in the middle of the day without having to ask Bob some other questions. So to kind of dependent upon you guys in the moment, shoot your questions at me so we can give you dives. If not, I'm going to go just deeper into what happened over the weekend and, quite frankly, why it was dumb, because I think that's the only way to describe what we just saw. A bunch of defensive scores across the NFL. And to a certain extent, you can blame it on, hey, the entire Northeast was bathed in wind. Yeah, that part was true. But the other part is that this is kind of the part of the year where you get discovered. And there are a lot of organizations, the NFL teams, that don't really update their thought processes. And once you realize what they're doing, they can be exploited. And that's one of the things I think we're running into at this point of the year. What's up, Adrian? So what's going on with the receivers in San Diego? Are they even playable? So thankfully for me, I was scared of Ladd's questionable status entering the week, and I kept him on my bench. But overall, when you see that the Chargers just laid a complete and utter egg this week, and Jacksonville was able to destroy them in the way that they did, that was very, very concerning. Jacksonville to me is one of these teams that looks like a contender based upon their record, but is more of a pretender. And yeah, no, I miss saying San Diego Chargers. I'm not going to lie. And part of me just does it out of habit. They're still the Oakland Raiders, by the way. But nonetheless, when we're talking about the Chargers defense, or the Chargers offense, rather, there's a lot of reason to be concerned. Jacksonville is not a powerhouse by any stretch of the imagination. And to make the Chargers look absolutely inept was very much concerning. Now, you can give me the argument that they were on Sunday Night Football the night before, although they were at home, and now they're playing a West Coast game, West Coast going East Coast at 1 o'clock, and those teams in general underperform. But that was more than just the historical bump of underperforming of going from West Coast to East Coast. And that to me was the most disturbing part of this overall. I believe in Herbert, but there is a certain element that you still got to protect the man. And the Chargers just flat out ain't doing it. So to answer your question, what's going on? Herbert's under duress, and they're in an offensive system that is being figured out, like many of the ones across the NFL right now. And teams that are forced to do changes, this is a rare benefit for the Steelers, are going to have an advantage here. Steelers are obviously changing quarterbacks. It might be an advantage for the Browns under the exact same logic. They have to run the offense different. Now there's no tape on it. But the Chargers have kind of shown what they are without their tackles. They're a run-first team that can't really pass protect. And Jacksonville's not an elite pass rushing team. So I really would lean on Ladd as probably the only Charger I want moving forward. Because even though he's doing so much more than slot work this year, last year he was a slot machine. It was amazing. Now Allen kind of has that role. I think they put him back into there just for no other reason to save Herbert's and to save the rest of the franchise. So if I'm investing in any of the Charger receivers, it's going to be Ladd. And the rest of them, I'm distancing to myself with. But QJ is kind of warming a spot in my heart. And one of the things that I mentioned earlier in the show are players that are going to be drafted way worse than their actual value will be. I'm fairly certain that QJ is going to fall into that list. QJ, in my opinion, is going to be going 8th round and beyond, and he's going to give you a lot more value than that. Welcome back, Quincy. 11-0. Love it. Started Otten. Would you pick up Juwan Johnson for him? So, yeah, if you're not going to score in a shootout against Buffalo, there's really not a reason to have him hanging around. And Juwan Johnson, is putting up points. Now, Quincy, to be totally blunt with here, we're kind of debating about, is the sky black or is the sky really, really dark purple? I don't think you're going to get a world of a difference, but I certainly would be more comfortable at this point doing the ceiling play of Johnson because their floors really are not all that much dissimilar between Tampa. Again, wanting to I think Tampa is still a very good team. And I still think that they're going to make a run for it. They're certainly going to win that division. With Bucky back, maybe Otten gets better, but the reality is Mbuka has kind of changed the face of that team in a way that I didn't think he was ever going to do. So I would make that move, long story short, but I wouldn't be expecting a monumental change when it's all said and done. Alrighty. Hurts, Hall, Williams, J. Pickens, Njigba, Kelsey, A.J. Brown, Ladd with a bench of Bucky, Johnson, QJ, White, Williams, Matt Wilson. Dude, how many trades did you do? You mentioned you did a lot. And I get that. What you're showing here, man, is one of the things that is so powerful, which is buying people when they're down or selling on name recognition. And when I look at your roster here, man, it's amazing. Quite frankly, the only person I would get off of this, because I don't think you're going to play him once Bucky's back, is Hull. And, you're probably at a spot where you're going to cut White, but that's where I would look at your team in terms of changing it. But I love that roster, and I love the process you did to get it there, because this is a lot of quality and value. And, you have a roster of J. Pickens, and Njigba. It doesn't really kind of even matter who your running backs are, but when you have Williams and Bucky gets back to full strength, we have Bucky as the third best running back in the playoffs, only behind Gibbs and sorry, I'm about to choke, Bijan. So that's an absolutely greatest spot. KJ, man, welcome. Based on next week's matchup, which receivers would you prioritize? Michael Wilson, Booty, Hollins, Coker, Leggett, Burden. So for me, if Harrison is still hurt, that is a 100% Mike Williams answer, no doubt. What we saw out of that position was that they are going to throw the ball as long as Kyler is on the bench, which he's on the IR, so he's not coming back. And if Harrison is out, Wilson is there. In fact, I'd probably give the edge to Wilson even if Harrison is back, because when you show the coaching staff that you can handle that volume and do production, granted, much of it during garbage time, but nonetheless, your tape is your tape and your stats are your stats, and he was putting up great numbers. So I'd look at that and say I would probably rank Wilson first moving forward, and the rest of them are kind of in busier rooms. Since you already have Patriots and Panthers, it gives me even more reason, given your situation, KJ, to go with Wilson there. So you traded Cup for Olave in week 2 after one big game, and then picked up Scattaboo and traded him before he blew his knee out. Dude, that is the absolute nailing of it. And that's also recognizing your roster up front and how these teams are built. Everyone knew coming into the season that wasn't looking at name reputation that Cup wasn't going to be able to have a lot of gas in the tank. And Seattle just used it all up off of the line, and being able to sell them and trade it there is amazing. It's actually kind of the opposite of what Kansas City did with Kelsey. Kelsey's still got some left. Maybe I'm not giving Kelsey enough credit, but seeing him go out and be a relevant part, fantasy speaking wise, is surprising to me. I thought that he would be below cut and paste, and that Gray would have been a dude at this point, and that's not even close to happening. So it's one of those things of being up on it before the draft happens and having a game plan going into it. And in best ball, this isn't the same as your redraft leagues, but every player has a value, and their values will change and fluctuate. Maximizing them is the key to this whole game. And there were questions about Henderson. Is Henderson hitting his peak? Is Henderson worth trading? I don't think Henderson has peaked out, and I want to keep him for the playoff roster. Traded Dobbins for QJ. Yeah, dude, like I said, that is some things to pick up there. You built yourself a great roster. Trade Drake London and Monange for J. Jeff if you need to win now. Well, then you got to take the J. Jeff. So I am all in on J. Jeff. And I'm all in on J. Jeff for two main reasons. The first is I believe in the offensive system in Minnesota, schematically speaking. Yes, I understand that McCarthy has left a ton to be desired, and that is true. But J. Jeff is the best physical receiver on this planet that does include Jamar Chase. And I want him out there as much as humanly possible. They're going to force feed him the ball, and J. Jeff is there. London at one point had 73 of the 75 total passing yards Atlanta had. I don't believe London can carry the load by himself. And J. Jeff could, but doesn't have to. So because of that, all in, I would take the J. Jeff side of that trade. You traded Woody Marks and Downs for A.J. Brown. Adrian, that's really kind of the only one on your roster there that I'm not sure about the long-term elements of. A.J. Brown had something like 7 to 9 targets in the first half. Basically did nothing with them. Was dogging it on one of his deep bombs down the sideline. A.J. Brown is no longer the number one in Philadelphia. And when it comes time to getting into the playoffs and them wanting to score points, again, whether that game is in LA or the Rams are going to them in the playoffs, I don't think that A.J. Brown will still be in this mode of fighting to get the ball. I think that problem will be well since resolved, and it basically will be with the notion it says, A.J., it was fun, bro, but you're lost your brotherly love. And I think that that's what's ultimately going to shake out there. So if your trade deadline hasn't happened, I would sell all those targets and sell A.J. Brown. That's my entire recommendation for A.J. Brown moving forward here. Oh, man, that's another thing that happens. Bob would be losing his mind hearing that you guys are making rules that you're not allowed to trade with someone. Because the simple fact is that most people in general aren't good at trading. It's a natural thing that you see in negotiations of the bias of what you own. You think it's worth more than what it is. And then there's also the bias of, I just don't want to look bad after the fact. And if you get the reputation of, I'm someone who just makes everyone look bad and trade destroys them, it really can become hard to overcome that kind of mental stigma. So, Adrian, I look out for you there. I wish it didn't happen to you. But throw out A.J. Brown and Rice and then go get one last major trade to take advantage of someone. Or Christian White. You had White on your team. If I can't get J. Jeff for London, who would I target? So perception-wise speaking, people probably have London higher than Devontae Adams. That's a spot you could do and maybe get even an extra piece back. Or if you're looking at getting rid of Monangai, you can do a balance 2 for 2. I personally think that London is not going to outproduce Devontae the rest of the year, but perception-wise isn't going to have that be the case, especially after his percentage of offense numbers are coming out, meaning Drake London's percentage of offense. So I would push that type of direction. Other guys you could look at, Pickens is certainly a decent quality guy to look at, although it would help you tonight if he gets more of PI numbers like he is prone to do than actually catching the ball numbers. That's a risk you have with George Pickens through and through. You're not going to really want to do a volume play at this point because you're looking for a super stud. You're not going to be able to, you might be able to get Chase. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy only got 30 yards yesterday in a game where he played him the first time. He got 22 catches or something like that. Chase might be a possibility to target. But again, you're talking about a lot of people who have emotional love there. You guys will never hear me say anything bad about Nico Collins, but he looks back healthy and like he's going to dominate. I doubt you'd be able to pull out Collins for London and Monangai, but those are the types of guys that I'd want to look at. And again, if you're doing Devontae, you should be getting a second piece back with him. But that's where I'd be looking at for moving this guys through. So yeah, guys, love to see that we're getting questions from both formats here, both the vertical one and the horizontal one. Glad that you guys are using both of them, finding the one that best suits what you guys are trying to go out and accomplish. And one of the things that was interesting to me with yesterday's games was teams that really I thought were going to do better, just not showing up at all. And there are two offenses I really want to cite in this equation. The first is the Ravens, and the second is the Texans. Now, I know Baltimore always has a hard time in Cleveland. That's a given. But those interceptions and those turnovers that the Ravens have, we're at a cross section when we're looking at the Ravens offense. Do we believe that this is just who they are? Or are they going to return to the normal and start putting 35 up on people again? I personally lean towards the 35, but that's the that's how I would look at it. What is one player you wasted in a draft? Where am I at now? So one of the guys that I was really big on, and it's a late round guy, so you got to take that for what it was, that I was getting in the 10th round in June and probably in the 7th round in August, but I wouldn't let it go, was Cedric Tillman. So many reasons for being on Cedric Tillman. First was the Browns were going to be losing all the time. They're going to be chucking it, and that part's pretty much true. Cedric Tillman, I loved his bio. I loved all of his tape at Tennessee. He was poised for that sophomore explosion. And then the injury just boomed him out. But, I mean, there's a couple guys I was really in on that got injured early that I still think are the right play, and they will be fantastic playoff options, Bucky and Collins being the two case examples. So many of my drafts had both of them on the roster. So that would be players that I would be looking at now. In terms of my best balls, I'm above 25% of my entries making their playoffs, which is 7% above the projected number. And in both of my leagues, I'm in the playoffs, one of which I'm in first. The other one, I am in the last playoff spot. But you just need to make the playoffs. And when you got Jalen Hurts on your roster and Collins and Puka, feel pretty good in any individual matchup. So start one this week. Purdy, Brissett, or Trevor. Got Bo Nix on a bye. Who is best rest of the season, Bo Nix or Purdy? So with Bo Nix, I am still basically concerned about them not letting him throw the division away. However, they basically won the division yesterday. So the concerns I have for Bo Nix may not be as pressing now that they beat Kansas City as they thought they were going to be, because I didn't think they were going to beat Kansas City. So Bo Nix, I still think, has a certain degree of a restrictor plate on him. Purdy's going to be going for broke because the Niners have to. So with that being said, I think Purdy's going to give you better passing numbers for sure. And that's why I would lean that way for the rest of the season. Now, for this upcoming week, in week 12, when we're talking about Trevor Lyons with the Jags, that's pretty much mid as far as what we're expecting there. Brissett in Arizona, a little bit better. Garbage time is definitely a thing, and he shows he can put up some points in garbage time. But I still think that we're probably just going with Purdy. I can understand not wanting to put him in until you get some tape on him. And I would understand putting in Brissett. And ultimately, I would be coming down to what am I hearing Friday and Saturday about making that decision. But my choice would be coming down between Brissett and Purdy. Oh, skipped you there, Adrian. Jawan Jennings never played a game for you. Well, there's lots of players that would take him right now. Maybe we could trade him and get something for him. But you also have an incredibly stacked lineup. There's going to be a lot of players you took in the 9th round that aren't going to be doing anything for you. Alrighty, Jason. So on your bench, you have Vidal, and you don't want to drop him until Hampton's back. Totally legit. Monangai has a role, which is true. White until Bucky comes back. Pollard. Should I drop White and or Pollard for Wilson, Gainwell, Tootin, or Knight? So, guys, this is one of the things I talked about earlier in the show, and I'm going to put out here now. If Warren is not playing, Gainwell is a smash start. The Pittsburgh Steelers are starting Mason Rudolph. Historically speaking, when Tomlin has Mason Rudolph, their ratio of running to pass always tilts running. Gainwell, the last time Warren was out, was the 100% primary ball carrier. I think he got all but 4 touches out of the running backs. So Gainwell for me is the smash start. Would I cut White for him if Warren isn't playing? Absolutely, all day. I might cut White regardless. That was incredibly disappointing performance out of him, and see what Tucker did. White is pretty much going to where I thought about him as last year. He's only relevant if there's an injury, and he might now be 2 injuries away from being relevant again. So your next question is Wilson. Wilson is a little bit more nuanced than Gainwell. Gainwell is if he's hurt, you play, and there's no thinking. Wilson is if Harrison's out, Wilson's a smash start. Just do it. But if Harrison is back, is there going to be enough faith generated that they now could become a 3 receiving team? It's possible. I would do it. Those coaches have to be in the hot seat in Arizona. If for nothing else, them winning with Brissett is showing how bad they were at changing Kyler. And at the end of the day, I think all of Arizona is going to implode anyway. And Wilson is one of the young guys they could build around. So I say that all to say that I don't think Wilson's disappearing. I don't think he's getting 15 catches again or 15 targets again. But I do think that he's worth having on your roster above White. But again, he's not as big of the smash start as Gainwell is for me there. Next one up. If Dart is out this week, Brissett. Brissett is over Trevor. We had that question asked a little bit differently. But yeah, that's just the answer. Garbage time is real. Arizona lives in it. And Brissett's competent enough to be able to make some points in it. And I'm pretty sure that incompetent Arizona defense has now quit. Since this is a handcuff season, which 3 are best? Corum, B-Rob, Tootin, Stevenson, Emmanuel Wilson, Pacheco, or Knight. I also have D. Moore on the bench. He's probably droppable to get 4 of those 4 or 5 guys. So which 3 are best? Well, I mean, obviously it comes down to opportunity in this. Stevenson physically is not as good as Henderson. So he is definitely in the spot where he should not be getting the ball. However, we all talked many times about Vrabel and his clown shoes. So in terms of given points, given current situation, Stevenson probably comes to the top of the current situation. It's hard to project what the number 2 in San Francisco does. And this is the concern with B-Rob. Because you're not directly replacing McCaffrey's production if he goes down. So, as much as I love that role in that position, they would divert it and spread it around. And they have enough weapons really to do it in San Francisco. Corum is a guy who's starting to get more love, and I love the role of him. And he'd probably be where my gut heart says to go with. So I'd probably would go Corum, Stevenson, Pacheco, and then a hard line with Tootin being next. That's probably how I would look at that one, Jason, for a quick hitter. Purdy is a safe 15 to 20. You wanted to shoot for a boom or bust guy. You can give him a 5-30 for Brissett. No, I think that you're 100% right. There's a much lower floor with Brissett. But again, Brissett has the running ability that they're not going to be letting Purdy do. Brissett also, again, has so much garbage time to play with. And garbage time is real. Garbage time is real. Steve, oh, yes. I got to tell you, I was there. I was there when it went down. And it is really hard to punch someone's helmet off. But Jalen did it. So there had to be a reason that evoked him. I'm glad to see that that's there. And if Chase is out, Burrow definitely will not be playing this week. We were asked before about trading for talented guys. If you are the Jamar Chase owner, or the Jamar Chase owner in your league has to win to make the playoffs, go get Chase and go get him now. Give him a decent package. Drake London might be enough if you're in win now mode. Assuming you yourself also are not in win now mode. That is something that I would go out and do for there. So Tet and Diggs for Rico Dowdle. Blood, you have to need a running back to even consider this. So I am going to be on the record many, many times of not loving Tet's game. And I don't. I love even less Bryce Young's game, who's throwing him the ball. That being said, he has become his best friend and his get out of jail card. And Diggs is showing he's still got some left in the tank. The only way I'm doing this trade where I'm taking Rico Dowdle for Tet and Diggs is if I'm in desperate need of a running back. And what I would probably do before making this trade is just go get Gainwell right now with the hopes that Warren is out. That's probably how I would approach this and not make that trade. And you're talking to someone who is on the record and aggressively does not want Tet anywhere near his roster. I just don't think Rico is that much of a buy there. But man, Steve, that's a pull there on Chase, getting that big old suspension. Man, that is, if the Bengals weren't already done, they are definitely out of it now. And that's one of the things to keep in mind. I mean, you look at the division record. They just lost to the Steelers, so they have a split record against them, but they're 3 games behind them. So that's going to be an issue. They still have, and this is one of the things to look at, guys, whenever you're looking at it, for projections moving forward. One of the best indicators is your net points. Their net points is putting them at a spot where their projected remaining winning percentage, I'll pull it up specifically here for it's one of the things I keep track of, is that they're projected to have a grand total remaining of 3-8 across the rest of their schedule. They're not making the playoffs. And the reason I bring that up and coming about the love of garbage time isn't because, hey, they're not going to use garbage time. So they're not going to bring Burrow back. You're not going to bring Burrow back just to lose your last 7 games. And the rest of the team has phoned it in. I think that Burrow just puts himself on the shelf and calls it a day. And for the record, the only team that has a worse points differential than your Cincinnati Bengals is the Tennessee Titans. Something to consider. Something to consider. With Tyrod starting, does that make Breece better or worse? Let me ask this in a way that is not meant to be shitty, but I'm sure is. Could the Jets get any worse than they were? I mean, no. And because of that, and because there is nowhere to go but up, Breece has to get better with Tyrod Taylor. There will be some form of a completion that happens. Like, how bad are you when the other team is scoring more points than you have completions. Like, that should never happen. And it is daily life with Justin Fields. I'm in a spot now where I'm wondering if Justin Fields converts himself to a receiver or something. Because just like Kyler Murray, he's never going under center again. Difference is Kyler Murray shouldn't be in the NFL anymore. I'm cooked in 1 week with Chase suspended. London's out. Sutton and Terry are on buys. I need one to drop. Burrow and Dak to get 2 receivers. You have Jones to start anyway. Well, Burrow's the one you would cut because I just went on that whole thing, Jason, about how I don't think he's coming back. You're clearly in win now mode. You could look for a player that could give you value, but perception-wise, maybe the name isn't there. And we're not really having a whole ton of them left. Like, you're not going to go get Lamb. You're not going to get Collins. That would never get passed unless you're willing to throw in Sutton or Terry as I'll give you Chase and Sutton for CD Lamb. Maybe that happens, but if you get CD, you certainly should not cut Dak. But the reality of probably what you need to do here is look at someone like Devontae Smith. You know, package him with a Sutton and maybe one of those quarterbacks so you don't got to cut him. You get something for him. That would be a way to look at it. Maybe the guy who has one of the Cowboy receivers, you do Sutton and Dak to get a piece. That would be kind of the direction that I would be looking at because there is name value in both Burrow and Dak. Trading them might be worth it. All right, Jay, start 2 this week. Godwin, Shepard, Mooney. London is out with that broken collarbone. Any of the Panthers receivers, any of the Titans receivers, any of the Browns receivers. I'm going to go in reverse order. So if we're looking at the Browns receivers, I still do love Cedric Tillman. And I would look into him. Godwin is certainly in the best situation, assuming that he plays. So, and Mooney supposedly is hurt as well. So I need to get injury data on the Atlanta ones to get this thing clear. But Tillman's a guy I would look for. Titans are such a hard conundrum. I personally own DK, but it's nothing that's there. I mean, realistically, you're probably looking at Godwin, Tet, and Tillman, maybe DK, and then maybe Mooney based upon the injury. That's about where I'm looking. Jets Mitchell with Tyrod starting. I got to see a week of it. I got to see a week of it. The Jets are so prone to quitting. And there's probably pressure from within to consider the option. This goes back to a fundamental thing. Don't invest in Jets, guys. Just don't do it. So that's where I would be at. That's where I'd be looking there. I need help. Trade up for Drake London and getting Lamar Jackson. Sent it weeks ago, and he finally accepted it because London got hurt. I don't think that you should be allowed to do that. I would petition that trade should be voided because it has categorically changed before and after. I would take that one to the commish because it's categorically changed from when it was submitted to when it was accepted. And that's why trade should only be allowed to be standing for a day or two anyway. So that's how I would deal with that one, RG. But that's there. Kyler Murray moving to the you mean the actual MLB, like baseball. I thought you meant that as middle linebacker. Kyler Murray has never spent an ounce of his life watching tape. The only person who has watched less tape than Johnny Manziel is Kyler Murray. And that's only because Johnny Manziel would watch Johnny Manziel highlights. Kyler Murray, I guarantee you he cannot hit a slider. I guarantee you that he cannot do that anymore. And who's going to take him? He'd have to take way less money than he does now. And everyone knows he has no work ethic. Why would anyone pay him money is beyond me at this point. Yeah, RQ, I would definitely request the cancel because the trade is categorically different. I would not want to I would do some form of a rework around it. You can send the question in the Bob about the etiquette and technique of how to go about doing that. So 9-2, that's great. In the Chase League now, I'm fighting for the bye since I'm making the playoffs. So I'm playing the long game. I'm hoping London gets back and then Hampton comes back and Terry comes back. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Jason, if you are already in the playoffs, I would just eat Chase. There's no need to trade him. He's got to come back from suspension and be an absolute crazy person because he'll have had 2 down weeks in a row. That's how I would look at it. So I would just ride Chase, and if you eat a loss, you eat a loss. Yeah, RG, I'm back with what Adrian said. First off, trades shouldn't be eligible for more than 2 days. And we were talking about that on Thursday. We were talking about it on Monday of last week. So, I would push it through that, it's an unfair advantage. That's the fundamental fact. Trades actually, in my opinion, should be canceled, just like you can't start a player who's already started a game. That trade involving that player should get cut as soon as the game gets started. That's my personal opinion on it. If he goes back to baseball, he can play in Boston. Yeah, a guy who can't handle any form of criticism at all is going to become a Boston Red Sox. Yeah, that's going to work out really, really well. You guys started me on this. You guys started me on Kyler Murray hate and spin, and I'm going right into. I'm flying right this rabbit hole right to the end. He makes the exact same mistakes now that he made at Oklahoma, that he made as a rookie, and he has not been changed at all. And the only thing that has made the Carolina or the Arizona Cardinals slightly palatable was when they had a smart enough coach to limit his mistakes. And that's why long run, I actually think that Washington will be all right. It's a very good offensive coordinator there in Cliff Kingsbury. Granted, it's a college system, but I think that it will do well in Washington, and I don't think there's any hope ever for Kyler Murray. Oh, my bad. Of course he's playing Black Ops right now. Yes. He's playing Black Ops right now as we speak. There is no doubt he's doing that. And he will probably do that until his last day on Earth, because God knows they're not going to stop making that game. He'll be on Black Ops 28 before this thing is all said and done. The only question is does he run out of money first? But that's a question I have no intel at. Hopefully he's got a good agent in that department. Could be as good as Bobby Bonilla, though. So with that being said, guys, we're kind of running out of questions here, and we're hitting the 5 o'clock hour. Yes, RG, that is my answer. You should categorically cancel any trade that was there, because accepting it once you see it gets hurt is, it's flat out cheating. To leave a trade sitting out there that long and give no communication until you see the injury, that is, that's playing dirty. There's just no other way around that. I would push for the trade cancellation. And as someone in the league, I would definitely vote to veto it. 100%. 100%. Well, guys, it was an awesome show seeing you out here. Oh, you're still sending questions. I love it. I love it. I'll send 3 teams reviews since this is the last day for the trade deadline. Yeah, send them out to me, Jason. Yeah, let's do it. Team reviews, go out, make some stuff happen. Make this world go round with trades. Adrian, man, we are such on the same page right now. Taking notes and watching film. You know, Adrian, it's actually a principle of the thing. I don't even care what the records are. You don't sit around and let a trade linger through 2 weekends. I mean, that's a league design problem more than anything. Yeah, I definitely would not allow that to go through. If you guys were doing active trade negotiations and talking it back and forth, that's different. But to do what he did, nah, that just ain't right. Yeah, a trade. I don't even like when they you accept it and they linger for a couple of days. My opinion is that like I said before, once a player starts a game in the trade that he's in, it should not be allowed to continue, and that's just the way that it is. I mean, you can't start him. You shouldn't be able to cut him or trade him either. That's the way that I feel the system should be. Many agree with me, but you know how it is. Some don't. All right. Welcome, Jesse. Welcome to the party, guys. You guys know the drill. Send your trade information, your team builds in before your trade deadlines. I also want to throw this out here as just a general question for you guys. How many of you feel the trade deadline should be the start of the playoffs? Because that's where I personally lean. And some people are totally on board with that, and some people aren't. Just want to know that as kind of like a poll question. How do you guys feel about that? Getting it canceled is absolutely what you need to do, RG. Absolutely what you need to do. All right, first roster breakdown. Nixon Purdy, Hampton Rico, Puka, love that. Collins, Tet, Warren. Your flex is Wandale with Kamara, Shakira, Ricky Pearsall. 7-4. You just need to get one win out of the next 3 weeks. All right, so I like the fact you're going to be in the playoffs. And I really wanted to poke around with this roster. 7-4. I'm assuming you're in a 14-man league. Because while this roster has some dudes on it, especially at receiver, I don't want to be banking on Rico in the playoffs. I don't want to be banking on Wandale and Kamara in my starting lineups either. So I'm probably looking at using Shakira and one of those 3 players, Rico, Waddle, or Kamara, to do a 2-for-1 upgrade. That's where I'll be looking at changing this roster for you here. And that's how I would want to do that. You don't need to obviously do a lot of crazy changes. You also don't need to have 2 quarterbacks at this point either. I consider doing the same thing with Shakir, doing it with Nix as the other one. And if you can upgrade your RB2 and or your flexes, I think that'll give you a much stronger spot. You have assets to do it. And then I'd keep Ricky Pearsall as my, debate for game day, having to figure it out. That's how I would do with that roster for you there. Picked up Purdy and was thinking about starting him over Josh Allen's next week with the Texans matchup. Am I getting too cute? RCC, the guy just scored 6 touchdowns. The guy scored 6 touchdowns, and he's in a dead sprint to try to catch up to win this division. I am playing Josh Allen nonstop. He is my dude, and I am going to be riding with him. So I do think you're going way too cute on that. I get that the Texans defense is for real. Not fighting that at all. But Josh Allen's in a different league, and I would go with Allen. Lamar and Rome for CD or Higgins plus Andrews. I mean, I do, yes. Obviously, I'd prefer to have CD. Um, but I would probably do that one, RG. Um, again, I think Lamar's going to go off. I think he's going to be fantastic in the playoffs. But if you're in win now mode, Lamar's inconsistencies essentially is trading the name right now. I mean, we saw Mark Andrews steal the rushing touchdown that Lamar could have had. Granted, it was a tush push play, but you get the core concept. So I am totally okay with getting CD and Andrews for Lamar and Rome Odunze. I would do that. With Laporta out, it's all the more need to do that trade. Yeah, I would definitely do that because you're looking at two starters hitting your team. Next one, Jason. Dart, Cook, Genty, Brown, Ladd, Waddle, and then Dallas, Rico, Warren, Pittman. Dude, this is a much better team. You're 6-5, and you need to go 2-1 to make the playoffs. It's amazing. You got a worse roster with a team that I like more. So Warren's obviously going to be hitting it there, and Pittman's going to be in your flex. I would look, especially if he goes off tonight, selling Genty at his last peak. And that's where I don't want Genty on my playoff roster. So that's what I would do. I would go Genty to get another running back. Yeah, see, again, Bob loves being cute, and there's nothing wrong with that. Babies are meant to be cute, though, not quarterbacks. So you're riding with Drake. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. But still, the trade that you were doing of giving up Lamar for nothing now is still not acceptable because that the way that dude played it. And I can understand that argument for riding Drake over Lamar and still wanting to trade Lamar. But I just look at that there. So, CC, this is an interesting question. Harvey or Woody for the rest of the year? So, I'm on Harvey. With Dobbins being out and Harvey already being selected to be the future, I am on Harvey just gets his wings and flies. And that's how I would go with that there. Again, Woody has potential, but the offense just flat out doesn't score enough. And there are times when Denver just doesn't let Knicks throw it. So I would go with Harvey. Team number 3, Daniel Jones, Barkley, Kyron, Chase, London, Collins. Love that. Kittle, Javonte, Sutton, Hampton's on the bench, along with Tracy and Scary Terry. You're 9-2. You just need one more win for the bye. So I get what you're saying about with the Chase and London thing. Hear me out here on this one, Jason. I think I'm moving Barkley. I feel like I've given this take on this before, but I think I'm moving Barkley and Sutton to go get a flex with the expectation that you're playing Tracy until Hampton comes back. But you're going to be getting an absolute stud of a player, hopefully a receiver, to go in for London. So it might be a tough putt, but you might be able to talk to someone into a Mon. You might be able to talk into someone, a struggling J. Jeff. That's the direction I would look with there. And if someone's more interested in having Scary Terry instead of Sutton, I'm okay with that too. But that's the direction I would look with that one, Jason. A.J. Brown's schedule is lovely, but can we trust him in offense for him to get catchable targets? Well, can we trust him to keep running on his go routes instead of quitting? A.J. Brown is a person I'm 100% trying to get off of any roster I have. I've already said for a couple of weeks now, Devontae Smith has jumped him talent-wise on a depth chart. And given his inability to produce with the targets he had, particularly in the first half yesterday, I don't think he's going to get any love whatsoever come the playoffs. I think it's going to be a very bitter divorce when it all goes down. and I don't want to be stuck holding the bag that is A.J. Brown. So it's a lovely schedule. I'd rather have Devontae of it all day, every day. Maybe even Goddard, because I see A.J. Brown significantly writing himself out of Philadelphia, both online and on the field. So A.J. Brown is not a guy they're going to be investing in, not one I'd want to invest in either. So, guys, thank you all for being here. We just crossed the 5 o'clock hour. Not as long as the Thursday one, but you guys get how it goes. It was an awesome day. We will have Bob back with us on Thursday, and we will go from there. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you then. As always,